You and I probably hear this phrase tossed around in culture a lot, like, who is Mr. Right? You see this in Hollywood a lot. Well, I don't know. Is there one Mr. Right for each woman out there? Of course not. There's too much of a disparity in the number of men and women on the earth, so there's not one person for every other person. It doesn't work that way. But dating sort of is a means to an end. And the purpose is to find that person that you are best suited for in terms of exchanging love and glorifying God with your relationship. So what are the things that we're looking for in a mate, specifically a male, if we want to use the stereotypical term, Mr. Right? Well, here's a couple things. Are you intentional about dating, and is there a purpose behind it, or are you just dating for dating's sake? You're going to have a far greater likelihood of meeting Mr. Right if you qualify and have some standards in which you operate, some boundaries, so that those you do spend time with have the potential to be that, number one. Number two, what positive qualities are you not willing to negotiate over? Be it humor, honesty, transparency, vulnerability, being in touch with their feelings, integrity. What is it? What is it that you are looking for in a man? You'll know when you see it, but let's establish what those things are. A gentleman is a gentleman. That ought to be one of your non-negotiables. Does that person invoke in you a sense of safety, specialness, and security, even emotional? I don't know, maybe it's the art of conversation. Does he speak your love language? Does this person know how to convey to you that you are special to them as you get to know them, and they have a knack for sharing a love language with you? If you haven't noticed by now and you haven't looked at any other videos, please do so. If you're dating someone or you have an intentionality of establishing a long-term relationship with them, I'll save you a lot of time. If you can establish whether or not that person has an ongoing issue with pornography, if you haven't looked at some of these other videos, do. You're setting yourself up for massive failure and disappointment. Here's another one. I think it's a personal qualification, but nonetheless, I think it's an important one. If you're willing to commit the rest of your life to someone in a long-term marriage, don't you think, it seems like this would make sense, that person would be a person of prayer, and not only that, he'd be a man who realizes he cannot do what he's called to do on his own. He needs someone beyond himself to help him, namely God himself. He ought to be a man of prayer, and he ought to be one who can pray in front of you. He ought to have the confidence and the wherewithal to be comfortable being vulnerable before a God who's going to help him be the husband you want him to be? Or would you rather have a husband who doesn't need help from beyond himself, who's going to operate within his own devices? Look at it. Think about it. Are you willing to commit the rest of your life and raise children with someone who has made a statement by the absence of prayer in their life that they need no help doing so? That's worth thinking about. Humility. Humility is teachability. Is the person you're about to commit to, is that person open to instruction? A wise man is. These are just some very basic things that I think we need to get the bar raised a little bit before we enter into these long-term relationships, because these long-term relationships aren't working out. Something isn't right. And I think at the genesis of the whole relationship, some certain things have to be established. We are looking for Mr. Right, but we're going about it the wrong way. What are your non-negotiables? What are you willing to consider? There are other videos that help you to sort of ascertain why men are reluctant to commit and why women are reluctant to commit. But if you've met Mr. Right, seems to me like you not only need to feel that, you need to have thought that through. I'm simply trying to precipitate that process of thinking, and thinking objectively about what it is you're about to enter into. For a long-term commitment necessitates sober thought, and that's what I'm encouraging you to do. In the end, your sex relationship with that person, your physical relationship, ought to be the manifestation of an inward reality of something very special, not the other way around. And that too is a sign of respect in a man for a woman. Think about that. You're worth it. Who is Mr. Right for you?